Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work at NBC Sharks and on Twitter at Sheng_Peng.
I'm Keegan McNally. You can find my work at half-wallhockey.com, on Twitter at half_hockey, or at San Jose Hockey Now. It has been over a week since Tomas Hertl is no longer San Jose Shark.
Yeah, it's we last had a podcast at the trade deadline on March 8th, so it's been a little bit of a while. But today, since we are at post-trade deadline, we're going to talk about our top 10 prospects. We're going to reveal our top 10 post-trade deadline Sharks prospects.
Yep. And before we get to our top 10 and some honorable mentions that we'll include in there, and Shang and I both have a list that we haven't seen of each other's yet, so it's going to be a surprise. We're going to talk a little bit about the Sharks games of the past week or so, briefly, as much as we want to avoid some of them. We're going to talk
all of them,
mostly all of them. Some Hertl trade thoughts a week later. Just had it now that we have time to digest it, to get it into our system, how we feel about it. Some minor news about Ozzy Wiesblatt and Sasha Chmelevski. And finally, news about the Sharks' former scout, Igor Eronko, who was let go today.
Not recently, today, but it's actually been
today.
It's been a little while, and I put out the news today. So,
yeah. And then Shang, you had a little bit you wanted to talk about with some of the people who've been supporting you on your current road trip with the Sharks.
Yes. So speaking of that road trip, I am currently in Nashville. So I apologize for the different background. This is my buddy's place in Nashville. I am on the 5th city of the 5-game road trip. You might wonder why I'm still traveling, because the Sharks have 16 wins this year. And I guess I'll talk about it in a little bit. That has a lot to do with you guys, actually, why I'm still traveling. So I'll talk about that at the end there. But anyway, it's been a long trip, and I just it's about 10 o'clock here Central Time on a Monday. I just woke up from a fruitful nap. I just had some Long Island iced tea on tap. That's where my buddy. That made me laugh when I saw it. I was like, "What is Long Island iced tea on tap?"
Now, how powerful are Long Island iced teas on tap? I feel like they got to be watered down.
Yeah,
somewhat, you know?
maybe they're more powerful because they're like sitting in a tank or something like that. But anyway, my buddy said it's really good. I like, and so it was. I was at my buddy's favorite bar, so I was like, okay, I'll have it, and it was good. And so anyway, so now we're here, and let's first get to some of the Sharks games this week. So the last game we talked about was quite a while ago. It was before the trade deadline, and since then we've seen one Sharks win, Magnus Chrona's first win, which we'll talk about, and a lot of losing. So this whole entire road trip, we have had 4 games of losing here.
Yep.
I've been in Pittsburgh. I went in Philadelphia first, then Pittsburgh, then Columbus, and then finally, I'm missing one. See,
you're missing one.
I'm totally mixed up here. So, anyway, it's been a tough road trip. I can probably tell you more about food I've eaten. Oh, in Chicago, I was in Chicago yesterday.
Yeah.
I can tell you more about food I've eaten than good hockey that I've watched. So anyway, quick recommendations of food in terms of food. Michael's Original Pizza in Chicago. I just had some of their deep dish pizza. Terrific. Columbus. If you're ever in Columbus, you got to go to Schmitz. Schmitz is amazing. It's actually the place. It's the most reviewed restaurant in Columbus on Yelp anyway. So if you've ever been to Columbus, you probably have heard of it already, but it's in German Village, which was recommended to me by William Espy. William Espy of the Hockey Writers. He goes to some of the Sharks games. So shout out to William for recommending it to me. Cool. But anyway, I went to Schmitz, and I've been meaning to go to Schmitz for a while. It's terrific. I went twice. It was terrific.
You went twice? Okay.
I went twice.
What kind of food is it? Or is it just
German?
All around German food. Okay.
Yeah, so I had a sausage, stuffed cabbage, apple strudel, which was terrific. Oh, the best thing about it was the pretzels. So the pretzels were amazing. The best pretzels I ever had in my life. And that's a serious statement, I guess, in that area, because the Pennsylvania takes its pretzels seriously. I guess Philadelphia, it's like the oldest pretzel factory or something like that. I'm not something like that. I was reading up about it. Like that's where like the American soft pretzel was invented or something like that. Obviously German influence or something. But I had pretzels anyway in Philadelphia. I had pretzels in Pittsburgh, and I had pretzels in Columbus. And Schmitz was the best. Pittsburgh also had very good pretzels too. Actually, they had very good pretzels at the hockey game, but that's a whole nother discussion. But shout out to the Penguins for giving us free, excellent pretzels.
That's the benefit, I guess, of being a media member. Is the
it is. Well, pretzels and other foods. In Chicago, they had like brownies in a package that they just like, hey, take it after the game. And so I had my breakfast for the next week and a half. So I was like, okay, it's wrapped. It's not gonna go bad. They're sealed brownies. Like, okay, perfect. So I have breakfast for next week and a half in there. And so anyway, shout out to Schmitz. Also too in Pittsburgh, SND. Polish deli. That's a Dan Ruzanowski favorite. It's it's pierogies and things like that. So just so you guys know, but I would say though, above all though, on this trip though, it is Schmitz though. Like I said, I went twice, so highest recommendation if you guys go to Columbus. It's not too far from the arena, and so anyway, so that's mainly actually what I want to talk about.
And you've been in Nashville now, so like, did you get any barbecue, any Nashville hot chicken, anything?
I just landed this evening, so
you're just full of Long Island's.
Yeah. So I just had Long Island's. My buddy and I went to a place called Good Times, by the way, which is very good. Good drinks, and we had hot chicken sandwiches there that were solid. So that's a good place for sure. I don't think I'll have too much time because it's game day and I leave the next day. So usually I get time in for maybe one good meal. So maybe I'll get one in for lunch tomorrow. I'm not sure yet. So we'll see. We'll see.
Find a good barbecue place. Like we went to one right in Nashville together.
Yeah. We went to. I forget the name of it, but there's one close to the arena that I liked. I didn't go. I didn't go during a draft, but Martin's barbecue. So
that's right. Yeah.
That's another good one. But I don't remember the name, but the one we went to was on Broadway itself, though. That place was good too.
Yeah.
But anyway, all this food talk is better than Sharks hockey talk, of course, than actually what we see on the ice. But let's talk about what we see on the ice just a little bit.
I'm wearing a jersey, and it's for purely selfish reasons. Magnus Chrona got his first NHL.
Tank lives on.
Magnus Chrona got his first NHL win, and it didn't hurt the standings. And then the Sharks, they're the most clutch losing team I've ever seen. This is a new level. Normally, I'm very used to the Sharks winning when they shouldn't, or like another team winning or losing when they shouldn't, and then the Sharks like dropping in the standings for the Tankathon. But today. Not this day. The Sharks, or yesterday, or 2 days ago, whenever it was, they were the worst team on the ice, and it showed.
Yeah, so. I had a scout who he was watching the. I'm gonna change my lighting a little bit. This might be that's terrible.
That's spooky, man.
Yeah, this is like me being drunk or something like that. Sorry, guys. I don't think my lighting's really good. It's not as good as Keegan's, so I was trying to switch it up a little bit. But anyway, I had a scout tell me that. Yeah, I thought the Sharks had that game against Chicago, but then they didn't.
Yeah, the first period they looked like if Chicago sleptwalked through the first period, the Sharks sleptwalked through the last two periods.
Yeah, it's basically it's the Sharks, right? They had a 2-1 lead going into third period. They're looking good. Devin Cooley, I guess I'll talk about him first because I just brought him up there, but he was looking good, looking like he's on the way to the first win. And I know it's a kind of a win that you don't want in some ways because it's against Chicago, your main competitor for the best draft lottery odds, but on the other hand, though, he was playing great. It's a great story, though, if he wins that game. And the Sharks, being the Sharks, they give up 3 goals in 123, I think. Third period, they go down 4-2, turn that 2-1 lead into a 4-2 deficit, and they lose the game 5-2. So Sharks going to Shark. But let's talk about Devin Cooley really fast. Just a great story, a great kid. And I'm glad that at least that even though it's a loss for him, I don't know if you can really pin any of those goals in particular on him. He played really well. He played well enough to win, I think. and it's not his fault that the Sharks are going to shark. And so, anyway, shout out to Devin Cooley.
We've seen far worse NHL or far worse Shark goaltending performances this year than that
this
game.
Last few years, right? So
or even the last like couple weeks. I mean, it's you know. So I honestly, it was great to watch him, and you're right. The first like 2 periods, he was on it, like making really good saves, like and then I think the defense just kind of got away, and the Sharks lost their legs and just stopped skating. And
a couple of deflected goals went in. A couple of one was a screened one, right? The last one was an empty netter, and so that pretty much covers all of it. So,
what can you do? But congrats to Cooley, and I wonder if he's going to get more games going forward, just because it depends on
a good question.
If Blackwood's coming back from injury.
Blackwood is looking better and better, and there's a chance he actually might go against Nashville tomorrow, which makes me wonder if Blackwood is available to go, then who gets sent down? I actually think that maybe Cooley will stay because I think you want Chrona to get games. He is the sort of the prospect, right? Whereas Cooley's 26. Cooley does show to me some talent, but he's still older, and so he's a guy that if he doesn't get games, that you don't worry about as much as a Chrona, and so that would be my guess. But I don't know. Then we'll see if Blackwood is indeed available tomorrow. I've gotten kind of mixed signals about that, but he is doing better for sure, though. So it's not it's not like there's any concern about Blackwood. I think he is doing much better. But so we'll but anyway, ultimately we'll see there.
I really that trade, I liked it. I think people sometimes hem and haw about a 7th round pick or whatever, but
it's a
7th. But
they need a goalie. Yeah,
they needed a goalie. I like the story.
Thing,
later on, and if you keep Cooley around, like he can become kind of that like 3rd, 4th goalie in your organization kind of thing. I like that.
Maybe he's not there yet, but he does have some talent, so maybe he can get there. Yeah, I mean, if you look at his history so far, he doesn't look like a number 3 goalie right now. Number 3 organizational goalie because he's never played in the NHL up to last night. But he does have some talent, so maybe he can develop and get there. And I did want to add one thing too. He is. Yeah, we'll see on that. And then he's the first junior Shark goalie to play for the Sharks. Obviously, Matt Tennyson is the first junior Shark to play for the Sharks. He was a defenseman. So that leaves a spot for Macklin Celebrini to be the first junior Sharks forward to play forward for the Sharks.
From your mouth to God's ears, I guess. It's a great story. I do love that. And I love that we saw him in purple pads like 10 days ago when he was traded, and he still has those purple pads.
He's trying to get Sharks sort of themed pads, but
I know.
I think there's been a little bit of a backup on that because Blackwood also still has his white pads I know that everyone wants to get pads in theme with the Cali Finn jerseys, and they just haven't. It's just not there yet. And so I think I guess what I'm saying is that the goalies are aware of the color mismatches going on.
Sure.
and so hopefully that gets rectified soon.
Yeah, good for Cooley. Our other goaltender that is playing, and you already mentioned Magnus Chrona. I think so. I don't know how to phrase this. We briefly touched on this. There was the win that he had that he was very solid, and then he's had like kind of some very meh games and some solid games.
Yeah,
I'm gonna call it, because he's been thrust into this like position that is very, very poor for him. I'm gonna call it a win overall for Chrona. I think this was a good, however long it's been, 2-3 weeks of being on the Sharks. And if he does get sent down, I just wanted to mention that I think it's good that he found a little bit of consistency, even if he is still, even if the Sharks are porous in general. So that's it about Chrona.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really glad that he got a win. He also had a very good performance in Dallas too. Yep. Obviously, after his first Edmonton start, if that was how his season ended, I'd feel bad for him. Just that's sort of his taste in NHL. So I'm glad that he's had some good stuff happen to him.
Yeah.
And So it's been a good experience, I think, overall for him.
Yeah. So if he does get sent down, hopefully he learns from it and continues to grow with the Barracuda, because we really are kind of slim on prospect goaltenders. It's really slim. And we'll talk a little bit about it when we do our top 10 list, but I don't think there's a goalie on either one of ours.
Oh, I can. Yeah, there isn't a goalie on it. So
sweet.
Sorry,
Nailed it
Magnus.
already. Well, Magnus, I'm gonna yeah. Anyway, all right. So another shark that's kind of was acquired at the deadline that was I think we both gave it a good grade on the trade.
Oh, I gave it a great grade because it was all upside. Yeah.
Your favorite grade was the Klim Kostin for Radim Šimik in a 7th trade. And since that time, Kostin's come in and had 4 points in 4 games since he started.
He has as many points in these 4 games with the Sharks as he had with the Red Wings all year. So he has 4 points in 4 games, and he had 4 points in 33 games with the Red Wings.
Yeah, it's amazing what a little bit of ice time and a little bit of confidence.
Getting to play with Mikhail Granlund.
Yeah, getting to play like on some, good minutes, I guess. He's looked good.
He's looked fine, yeah.
Yeah, he's looked like a engaged, and I think there were some worries that we just acquired, like a big body, do nothing, score no points, and he's actually like got a good shot. He's parking.
No, he's got legit skill. You can even see him on the power plays. They put him on PP2. I'm not saying that he should be on a power play on like a good team or something like that, right?
Sure.
But he moves the puck. He makes just those subtle kind of puck movements on a power play to evade the penalty kill, or just some like pretty like basic but higher level stuff, right? Basic higher level stuff, if that makes sense. And he's fit in. He's looked good. Like you mentioned, his shot. Obviously a big body, but he can skate a little bit. Though I do think that maybe he can stand. If he wants to make that next step in the NHL, he might want to shed a little bit there, get a little bit leaner. Which if he does, then he might become a real force. But anyway, just overall though, it's an all upside trade there. First round pick in 2017. He's just 24, so he's way younger than Šimik, and look good. He's a guy that I consistently hear, and I put out a story about that he is a guy that he's good when he wants to be. And right now it appears that he wants to be. Right now it appears that he kind of knows that he's running out of NHL chances, and he's playing like that.
Yeah. And we actually didn't it's interesting because we didn't have this to pick to talk about, but Zadina is an interesting comparable just because it's another first round pick.
Sure. Just a year behind, yeah.
A year behind.
I mean, Zadina is 2018, Kostin's 2017, yeah.
And it's interesting the way that Grier finds these guys that need a little bit of ice time and a little bit more confidence boost and see what they can do with it. Whether or not these, any of these low risk possible reward moves pan out long term, who knows? But I still like it.
They're good bets. I mean, we can even talk about the Stanika trade and also the Addison trade, and whether or not those guys work out or not. These are all good bets for the Sharks now to take on guys that are. And we talked about this at the deadline, and you mentioned that with Wallstrom, right? Like these are good bets for guys to take, right? Like players that are like kind of out of options or already out of options, and can they kind of find a better footing with more of opportunity and whatnot?
And Zadina is actually 2 points away from a career high in points.
Is he?
He's got 22 this year in 62 games. His career high is 24 in 74 games. So
I know he's got the goals, career high in goals now. So
yeah, so he's about to be, if he gets 2 more points this season, hopefully.
I think he still needs to find some consistency. But we see the potential though in that Philadelphia game, a couple of goals there, right? And I think he still has a problem of chasing offense a bit, and which is natural. But if he can not do that so much and just kind of focus on sort of the two-way aspect of the game, on just the simple stuff, the offense will come instead of chasing the offense. But there's definitely some good signs with him too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. What did you see from our call-up of Thomas Bordeleau, who's been up for a couple of games now? How have you liked his play?
Actually, this is the best that I've seen from Bordeleau overall. Going back to even his very first time with the Sharks. His very first time with the Sharks, this was and that's all the way back to 2022. That's when he beat the Golden Knights in a shootout, right? And everyone was all hyped up on him. The one thing I saw back then that was a problem in the intervening years I didn't clean up was his puck management. His puck management was very, very poor. In the first time around when he was razzling and dazzling people, and I think that he was benefiting back then from sort of end of season hockey when people don't really care as much, and also too a team that just was kind of letting him go and letting him do his thing because it was his first time in the NHL, so they weren't too hard on things he was doing. The problem, though, is that he didn't learn from that for about a year or so. At least it didn't look like it in the NHL level, and even to some degree with the Barracuda. He was still playing that kind of, pawn hockey or this kind of very loose hockey. He was doing it at the start of this season, too. And granted, he was put in a very, very tough position. He was playing basically second or third line center for a team that was awful, that was getting steamrolled. That was the 0-10-1 Sharks. And that wasn't healthy too, because the only healthy center they had basically then was, the only two healthy centers were basically Hertl and Sturm, and Couture was out. Granlund was banged up too. And so it was a tough spot that the Sharks put him in back then. So I'll say that for him too. But this time around, though, I'm seeing a more in control Thomas Bordeleau. More Thomas Bordeleau that isn't doing too much, isn't chasing the offense as frequently. I'm not saying that his every play makes us clean or whatever, but there's been a much this, like I said, this is the best I've seen from him. I mean, he played wing at the end of last year too. I thought he was not very good last year, and we've talked about this on the podcast that he wasn't very good last year at the role. But this is the best, and not perfect, still working on it. But this is encouraging, though, I'll say.
Yeah, this is. I agree. It's been the most consistent stretch at the NHL level that he's had, and he hasn't had many, but he's had a couple. And the most he's not getting pushed around, and it's not like he's always had like a very good low center of gravity for his size, and it's just now he's kind of using it a little bit more effectively. And
it could be because he's at wing too. He's not being tested as much, which I think is good. So I think the move to wing, which looked really rough last year, I think may be benefiting him now.
I think he's adjusted, which is what you always want when these guys, like, he obviously thought he's going to come in as an NHL center and then be a center.
Right, it makes sense, yeah.
And so, like, the adjustment period has to happen. I think he's started to make that now. And, the consistency bit is going to be key, right? Like, if he stays with the Sharks for the next foreseeable future, because the Sharks are pretty light at forward. Right. That the consistency is going to be key, and something that I'm sure that Grier and Quinn are going to be looking at with him, because you don't want him to trail off and basically lose a spot in the lineup like he did before. So.
Right.
I did like it, though, and there was a couple of games he's just doing the simple play. He's like going to the net, he's going behind and forward checking aggressively. And you're right, his puck management is like way better.
And then when there is a moment, he'll show some razzle dazzle, but those are for the right moment, like they're in the zone and that sort of thing. And so that's where it needs to be. We don't need him to razzle dazzle and turn it over when he's exiting the defensive zone, because that's one of the worst places to turn it over. We don't need him to do it in the when he's entering the zone either, because that's another bad place that feeds the counterattack. And he's not doing that. And so that kind of stuff, even just that simple. Actually, one thing I did want to say that Quinn said, I'm working on something about it, but Quinn said after the I think it was the Ottawa game, actually, and he said that he was proud of Bordeleau, which is a very interesting use of the word. And a couple of days later on the road, I asked David about that. Why did he use the word proud? And he said that there's been sort of a mental shift that he can see with Bordeleau's game, a sort of a what I'm not sure what the right word is, understanding of what he can and cannot do at this level. And some degree of it, I'm not sure if it's like I said, consistency is still going to be an issue, but I and I think it speaks to how far Thomas has come, as opposed to when we're talking about him last year. And I think that I myself was sort of doubtful of sort of his chances, just because I didn't know if that. I think I alluded to it. I mentioned a number of times on this a couple times at least on this podcast, that I thought that his biggest enemy was himself, kind of, in a lot of ways. And I think that may have changed, and we're seeing that on the ice finally.
Yeah, I was always very down on his chances, just because he looked always better at center, and he never really looked good at wing until this year. So it's good that he's adjusted for sure.
Yeah,
and it kind of helps to fit you in a lineup when you're not carrying the defensive load on your line. So very excited. I think William Eklund, our Swedish son, our Swedish prince, he has 30 points. He's 10 away from getting to the 40 that I was hoping he would get to this season.
Yeah.
I don't know. His play the last couple of games, I feel like it's trailed off a bit, and
it's been rough. He's had a rough road trip. I think he's carrying a lot of the load for his line, just because, that's the way it goes when you have so many injuries on your team. He's the center too of it too, so yeah.
Yeah, it feels like he's kind of fading a bit in terms of his impact, especially offensively. Yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of what all I had to say about Eklund, is that I just want 10 more points, end the year, somehow go on like a crazy spree, and pull it out, Eki.
I will say with William that he has shown that this year, that he's gone on kind of these droughts or these kind of low spells, and he's come back from it.
Yes.
And so I feel confident that he'll come back from it. But I think, though, when we look at this season on the balance, his first kind of full season, right, that it was very up and down. But I think that obviously the ups are still what they are, and you're still excited about it. But
yes,
it's a challenging season for any player this season on the Sharks.
Yeah.
And so you have to hope that this season, as hard as it was, that he learns from it and he's the better for it. I think he will be. I still have confidence in the player, but it's not a rocket ship up for him, though.
And that's the way that he responds, or has responded in the past.
Yeah.
He takes these kind of things in stride and adjusts his game for it. So who knows? He'll probably go on a 10-game point streak and then hit our 40 points, and we'll be happy. Which would honestly put him among like the Sharks leaders in points. So.
Yeah, might make him like second or something like that after Granlund.
Yeah, Zetterlund's second with 32 right now.
Right, yeah. So him and Zetterlund, and trying to get past Tomas Hertl at least, who is still second, even though he stopped playing for the Sharks in January.
It blows my mind how much the Sharks' skill forwards are just Granlund. There's a lot of dudes that do very well in their roles, and obviously Eklund's still developing into a skilled forward, right. But really Granlund's the only finished product, I think, of
Granlund is the only forward, honestly, that would play on any team in the league.
Basically.
No, I think if I go down, maybe Sturm, because Sturm can fit a certain role.
Probably. Yeah.
But Zetterlund, as good a season as he's had, he's still a little bit of a tweener in terms of he's getting more of opportunity, and he's taking advantage of it. But does he necessarily play on a better team? Would he embrace being, say, a fourth line forward on the Colorado Avalanche, which is probably what he would be on the Avalanche? I don't know. Whereas we know Sturm, any role you put him in, he'd be fine. And so everybody else, though, I'm not so sure based on the seasons they've had.
Yeah, exactly.
where they would slot in, like a guy like Cunnin, I can see, just because he's a guy that also is like a Sturm that can fit that kind of knows his job and doesn't overstretch himself. So maybe he can be a fourth liner somewhere. But guys like Zadina, Eklund are young, and those are the kind of players that contending teams will not play, because they're like, well, you're gonna make mistakes that will kill us, so you're better served in the minors or somewhere, or playing for another team. And so so I don't actually know if they play on a regular basis for contending teams, those two. And then down the line, we can talk about the rest of them. Yeah, I have no idea. So I really only feel very, very confident about Granlund and Sturm, and really just Granlund, because Sturm, you can argue, would be like a 13th forward on a really, really good team. So maybe just Granlunds. Anyway.
Yeah, we've lost Duclair and Hertl, so those were our other two. They're gone.
Couture too.
Yeah.
So never had him this year, but yeah.
We talked about. Well, I just briefly segued to him. It's been 10 days since Tomas Hertl is no longer a San Jose Shark. I feel fine.
Yeah, I still don't think anything different about the trade than I've said in many places. So we don't need to rehash our arguments for the trade.
Yeah.
But I still talk with people, and people still push back. I mean, not everybody agrees with it. Even past like stories I publish, I still talk with people about it, and some people are still pushing back on it, scouts or whatever. But I still don't think it just comes down to. You got 2 first-round picks for him. It's really not that different than the package you would have got for him in 2022. It just you had to pay a little bit more of a cost this time in terms of the third rounders and the money retained that you wouldn't have to pay in 2022. But that's not Mike Grier's fault. But you did get the good stuff back, at least the premium stuff back. There are 3 premium assets in that trade. One of them is Tomas Hertl, obviously. One of them is David Edstrom, and one of them is 2025 unprotected first. And so you have 2 of the 3 assets, 2 of the 3 really good assets in the trade. Granted, the very best asset is still Tomas Hertl. Probably will end up being too. David Edstrom is probably not going to be better than Tomas Hertl. 2025 first, if it's later, is probably not going to be better than Tomas Hertl. But they're still really better than you should have received for a guy who's 30, who has 6 years left on his contract, long contract. And so it still was the right trade that Mike Grier made. I still do not think that there was necessarily a better trade out there in the summer. It's not a slam dunk, at least, that some people assume, if you wait to hold Hertl to the summer, that you'll get better offers. I'll say one thing. I talked with how do I phrase this? I asked one scout who did not like the trade, and I asked him, okay, your team, and I can't say his team, obviously, but your team during the summer, I know you personally like Hertl. You like him as a player. I think most of us do. You like Hertl as a player. Would you trade your Edstrom equivalent? I gave him a player on his team that was kind of the closest equivalent and value to Edstrom, I thought, right? And your 2025 unprotected first, would you trade that for Tomas Hertl this summer? Even with the retention, you get that same retention that the Sharks gave the Golden Knights. And he thought about it, and he said, no, I don't think so.
And has to fit a window too. So
it has to fit certain windows. So the window here was that the Sharks wanted extra playoff run with Hertl, which is this year's playoff run. So that's a part of it. But a part of it too is that we know, again, it wasn't a player for player trade. You have to factor in the contract if you're a Sharks fan. Tomas Hertl is the best player in this trade. He probably will end up being the best player in this trade. You have to live with that fact. But there just wasn't a better trade out there, obviously, for a guy with that contract too. And like I said, that's why I asked this scout friend of mine, I asked him just point blank, and even if I can't give you the sort of the team or the prospect or whatever, right? I think at least gives you a sense that it's not a slam dunk that Sharks would have gotten a better trade in the summer. Mike Grier said of himself that, and you can say that Mike was just trying to cover his ass and PR, but Mike said flat out in his post trade deadline press conference that he didn't think that there was going to be a better trade for Tomas Hertl. Yeah. He was asked that. If you guys read the story or transcript I wrote, or if you listen to Mike's availability, he was asked, why not wait till the summer? And he said, I don't think there was going to be a better trade for him. So I still, we don't know. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball. It is possible that there could have been a better trade or equal trade in the summer, but I find it highly unlikely though. So it's not a slam dunk. I'll say that for sure.
I have 2 thoughts, I guess, and not completely without thoughts. After a week later, one, if Tomas Hertl does well and scores 50 points in the next 30 games and then lifts the Stanley Cup with the Vegas Golden Knights, I'll be happy because I love Tomas Hertl. And it's good. And yes, it will sting, and the people will make fun of the Sharks for giving away a player at $6 million or 6.7, whatever it is,
6.75
of his caliber. That is clearly doing extremely well on a good team. But still, I'd be happy if Tomas Hertl won a Stanley Cup. So I don't care. And the second thing is everybody in every single media outlet, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but they constantly just mention the 3 retention slots like it's the end of the goddamn world. And it's not. It's not the end of the world that the Sharks are using 3 retention slots for one more season after this, and then 2 more for however God knows how long. But it's not the end of the world. We don't have any big contracts to move unless you count Couture or Vlasic. And neither of them are probably going anywhere based on injuries, and Vlasic's
Couture is mainly an injury bit,
Nobody wants Vlasic at 3.5 anyway, and Couture, unless he somehow rounds into form, isn't tradable anyway. So who cares if we can't trade them next year? And secondly, we have, like, if your worry is the Sharks cannot use that retention slot to get cap space to broker their cap space, the Sharks have like $40 million in cap space this offseason. Like, they could, if they wanted to, take in a shit ton of bad contracts. And Grier has taken in Hoffman and all of these like mediocre-ish contracts for draft picks, for draft capital already. Mm-hmm. He did it in the Karlsson trade. It's not unreasonable to think he might do it again. So why are you worried? I don't know. It's just something that the media outlets continually keep trying to push as like a way to poo-poo this trade. And it's like, it doesn't matter. If we lose on a 4th, we lose on a 5th. I don't care. He can also get like a bad contract for a 2nd or a 1st. Like,
I mean, look, it's not outstanding. I mean, we don't need to sugarcoat it either. I didn't
not the worst end of the world.
It's not the end of the world. I didn't think that Grier would necessarily do that. That he would commit all his retention spots for multiple years. Actually, I think Grier kind of implied it in a pre-deadline, maybe after the Cali Finn jersey, basically his all-star availability. I think he kind of suggested that. Mm-hmm. I think that I would guess, I don't know this for a fact, but I would guess his Hertl trade was too good for him to pass up. I think that's the main thing, that he was getting 2 first-round picks back. Yeah. And I don't think that he foresaw, or he was guessing that there was going to be another trade like that coming in the future in the summer or whatever. So even with having to take up all his retention slots, like I said, the trade was just too good to pass up. And so, and you are right, though, in terms of what the Sharks are missing. Like, okay, you are missing the chance to, say, retain on Mikael Granlund. That could be the difference between a 4th round pick next year and a 2nd round pick, which matters. I'm not saying that's insignificant, but you're getting 2 firsts back for Tomas Hertl, which I don't think you were getting if you didn't retain a bit. Sure. And so, Vegas is like, okay, maybe we'll take on all the contract, but we're only going to give you 1 first. We'll give you David Edstrom or to 2025. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I am saying, though, that retention bit is what certainly helped grease the wheels to get 2 first-round picks there. Essentially 2 first-round picks from the Golden Knights. And so it is a little bit, I get it, because the Sharks are, I'm sure, the only team that has all 3 retention spots filled up now. And they won't have flexibility until after 2024-25 when Brent Burns comes off that. And so that is something to look at, and that is not a good thing. But it's not the end of the world, like you say.
Yeah. And we can always just have another team be the brokerage for Mikael Granlund.
Yeah, though that could be challenging too, though. I will say, though, that was one of the things that Grier mentioned, that it was challenging to find somebody to be a broker for Barabanov, and that's why he didn't move. And so that may end up being a problem. I wouldn't assume next year that it'll be that easy to find that, but for the players that the Sharks, at least right now, are thinking of you might put up next year, the Rudas, the Granlunds, who are going to be UFAs, that even with retention, they weren't getting you back first-round picks. And I think, again, that's the difference. Hertl, retaining on a Hertl helped get you a first-round pick or 2 first-round picks. You're not missing out on that with a Granlund or a Ruda or whoever you mentioned. So
you're trying to create value out of thin air, and that's what he was trying to do. Trying to turn a contract that was bad for the Sharks into a win for the Sharks, and there's some hurdles in the way. That's pretty good. All right, that's all I got. I feel fine with it.
It was a good trade. It was a good hockey trade. It was a good hockey trade.
All right, some minor news. Ozzy Wiesblatt was loaned from the AHL Barracuda to Milwaukee for the duration of the season and playoffs, which was interesting because it was kind of, I don't know how everybody else found out about it, but I found out about it on Twitter.
Oh yeah, they just snuck it through the wire. So.
They snuck it, and they snuck it
through the AHL transactions,
on the AHL transactions page, which is fascinating. And then I texted you when I heard about it. And you were like, "Yep, it's happening."
Yeah, and then I started digging in on it, and yeah, from what I understand, the Barracuda have said it, but I mentioned in my story about it that I checked in with a source apart from the Barracuda, so it's not just Barracuda speak or San Jose Sharks organizational speak.
Yep.
That it is pretty much what Joe Will said, that they want to give him a chance to play in the playoffs, give him a chance to develop. I think if we look at sort of the what's not being said, that Ozzy probably wasn't going to get called up this year. Whereas guys like, Gushchin's going to come up at some point, Mukhamadullin, right? They've already been up there, right? And I could see Cardwell getting called up too. Cardwell's had a good season, so he may have earned it. Stanika will probably get a look too. That's another guy in there. Jack Thompson might get a look too. But Wiesblatt wasn't quite there. He hadn't played well enough to earn a call-up. Whereas in Milwaukee, from what I have heard, I think that he'll get some good time, some good ice time, and it'll give him a chance to play some meaningful hockey and some playoff hockey, and hopefully that it will spark him. And so I don't think it's as dire as it looks at first, as some fans kind of see it. And I'm not saying it's a good thing. Anytime you're kind of, I don't know, I've never really seen this, so this is probably not a good thing that he's not good enough 2020 first round pick to get called up for sort of NHL garbage time, NHL cup of coffee time. So that's not good. I'm not saying that Ozzy's necessarily going the right direction as a prospect.
Sure.
But I can see this being a good thing for him. And until I hear otherwise, I haven't heard of anything like this is Ozzy wanting out or whatever sort of business that you might wonder about when something like this first happens. That yeah, I think indeed it is from what I've heard so far. And if I hear something different, I'll let you guys know that it's seen as the best for him.
Yeah.
And I can see it. I can see it. He gets more regular playing time maybe, and he gets to play on a playoff team.
I'm not mad about the move. I don't think it's maybe he shows out and does fine. I just don't think it's as consequential as, like you're saying, maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, he is where he is, right? I mean, as a prospect. He is one guy who, spoiler alert, is not making my top 10, and probably not. I don't know your top 10, but probably not yours either.
No,
for Sharks prospect, he has kind of he's had a rough couple of seasons for sure. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he's been Ozzy for a while. It's just. There was a lot of anyway, but I'm hopeful that he will on a new team get some new opportunity and still.
I wonder if this will be kind of it might be a new trend, because I do think it's interesting to give your guys that he's in a weird place, because I think he is still a value prospect to the degree of being a first round pick, and you want to get the most out of him. And so I wonder if it's sort of a tricky way to get your guy a little more playing time that other teams will exercise. There is a risk, obviously, of putting your prospect on a different team. You don't know how it'll be handled. You obviously don't. You worry about injuries and on all and that whole bit. But I wonder if we'll see more of that in the coming years. But
It is unusual.
Yeah, it's very unusual. Yeah.
Very strange. We'll have to see in the summer what. I think Ozzy's not an RFA yet. I think
no, he has one more year left in his ELC, so he's got one more year to kind of
figure it out.
Figure it out. Yeah, maybe he does get traded this summer. Some people think that this is a prelude to the Predators trading for him. Yeah, it's possible. I mean,
sure.
It's hard to explain it to people. Ozzy has not been great in the Shark system, so there's no doubt about it. But is he still Joe Will said the word, I think, valued or something. In I mean, I think he still is valued, or otherwise they wouldn't bother with this, right? Like,
I agree.
Another team. I mean, Milwaukee wants to have him too. This is not. I don't think this is Sharks like begging, begging someone to take him. I think that this was Milwaukee wanting him too. So there's still some degree of sort of perceived value there and whatnot.
Yep.
But like if a move happens in the summer, I don't think it means that. I don't know. I just it's. I think it's one of those things where like kind of multiple things can be true. That there's still some value with the player, obviously, but obviously not as much. He's had a very very undistinguished or was it undistinguished run as in with the Barracuda over the last couple of years here. But
it's just, yeah, it is what it is. There we go. That's the that's the end of that one.
Yeah. Also, that's probably a good way to summarize it. So.
Yeah, one day we'll have to do like a 2020 draft class revisited. I think one day, not yet.
Yeah,
there's still stories to be written about.
There's two more main guys left, obviously, in Bordeleau and Gushchin. But it is looking not as promising as it did in 2020 for sure.
We'll do a retrospective at some point.
Yeah.
All right, Sasha Chmelevski. Is he or is he not? Will he or won't he? There was a story that came out this week that he possibly had some interest in rejoining the Sharks or the NHL.
It's my story.
It's your story.
A story.
A story. It is the San Jose Hockey Now exclusive story. If you haven't read it, it's probably on there on that website.
Yes, it is. It is on that website. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that there was a possibility that he could return to the Sharks. That's an interesting part of that story that I read because I always assumed it would be elsewhere.
That's the thing that I clarified because I think in January Kevin Weeks mentioned that he's looking for a trade. Maybe he's comes back to NHL this year, but he couldn't anyway back then because as far as I understand it. He had to have signed he was an RFA because the Sharks qualified him 2 years ago before he left to Russia. And he wasn't signed by December 1st. And so because he wasn't signed, he was never available to come back this year to an NHL team. And so I clarified that with his agent, Dan Milstein. And so it is interesting that I think there's been some thought, it may end up being true that he may not want to come back to the Sharks. Chmelevski, but his path to the NHL is directly tied into the Sharks because he's an RFA. He doesn't get to sign where he wants.
Yep.
So he has two ways back to the NHL right now, which is he's 24, right? It'll be a few years before he's an unrestricted free agent. And so it's either through the Sharks or the Sharks will either trade his rights. And so that means that another team will demand for his rights. And we'll see if there's a demand out there. Obviously, he's put up a lot of points in the KHL.
Yep.
But we've also seen, and I think there are legitimate questions about that. Like, well, is he going to be able to produce even half that in the NHL at the NHL level? I don't necessarily think that teams are convinced of that. I think there are question marks. I do think that there is some hope that he can. So it's not ruled out. And so there could be trade interest in him this summer. But I also think that the Sharks are a great opportunity for any player right now, obviously, to establish yourself. Whatever happened in the past, and I don't know much about that part of it. I haven't dug too much into that. But if you're a center looking for a future in the NHL, well, welcome to the Sharks, where you have 1C Mikhail Granlund, 2C Logan Couture, who we don't know the next time he'll play again. And so there's plenty of opportunity on the Sharks. If you're a winger, obviously there's plenty of opportunity. If you're a defenseman, you have number 1 defenseman Mario Ferraro. There's plenty of opportunity on the Sharks if you're trying to establish yourself. So if you're Sasha Chmelevski, you have to look at that and be like, okay, well, that's a good reason to maybe give another shot with the Sharks. And so anyway, we'll find out more. That's what Milstein said. Told me that it'll be, talk with Mike Grier soon and get a sense of sort of the Sharks did want Chmelevski enough a couple of years ago to qualify him. They thought enough of him back then to qualify him. Sure. And so, do they want him now? We'll find out.
Yeah, it wasn't a Grier guy, obviously, many years before Grier came on.
Well, no, again, Grier qualified him.
No, that's not what I mean. I meant he wasn't a original Grier guy. Yeah. And a lot of those guys have been kind of leaving the organization. Sure. So that's why I never thought that he was going to come back to the Sharks specifically. So it's an interesting thought that maybe he might.
He has to in some way, right?
So, yeah. Either has to come back and then be traded immediately, or come back and stay, or whatever. But,
right.
Yeah. So or wait till he's 27, like you said, which is many years away, and he could do that. I mean, he seems to be doing. Fine
he's doing great in the KHL, and I'm sure they want him back. So
yeah, who knows? Exciting off-season talk for sure. We'll do the countdown to Sasha Chmelevski's signing day, I'm sure.
I've heard interesting things about what people think about his NHL, I guess, chances now. I think people think in general that he is better now than he was with the Sharks a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But there's still question marks. Anyway, so I have a story coming out about that. Just what a couple of scouts who have seen him, what they kind of think of his KHL production, and if they think that it'll even translate to some degree in the NHL.
Speaking of scouts in the KHL in Russia, look at these segues today. Igor Eronko was let go from his position less than a year after being signed by the Sharks.
Hired by the Sharks. Yeah, he's hired in August. Yeah.
Which is unusual.
It is
very
unusual.
Strange.
It is.
Talk about the quotes that are in the article.
Where did the story show up, Keegan?
This would also be on San Jose Hockey Now. And I read it and I was like, wow, this article is titillating. This article is thought-provoking. It's just the quotes were interesting, and I don't have them in front of me, but about just they laid it out, like why we're firing
Mike,
this dude.
We're being very, 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 very direct.
I've never heard somebody
I will say that, guys, if you get hired by Mike Grier for a job, whether it be painting his house or making the perfect burger for him, you better do your job. Or
if we interview Mike Grier on this podcast and we don't do a good job, he might fire us from our own podcast.
I think what we learned from his quotes about Eronko, and look, trust me, he told me these quotes. I was like, whoa.
You're like,
whoa.
Can I put this out there?
I had a lot of moments mental as, whoa, you just said that. But I think that that Mike has let everybody know that if he hires you, if you fuck around, you'll find out.
No,
and
yeah,
so I guess what I'll say about all that is that I got wind some time ago that Ronco was let go. I did find that very curious. I started checking around with sources. I heard some really bad stuff from other people that I couldn't quite verify. So that's why I wasn't going to come out with it, because I couldn't verify some of the bad stuff that I heard. I will say that it is worse than what Mike said.
Wow.
So, but I don't know if that stuff is true. So I want to say that, like, it could be as simple as Mike said. The guy just didn't show up and do his job, which is bad enough, obviously. But anyway, so then I checked in with the Sharks and Mike, and so yeah, I think that they thought it was a good idea for Mike to comment on it, maybe because I did find out and I was going to have a story out on it.
Sure.
But it was a story. Yeah, it was a story out with sort of, until I confirmed the stuff I had heard, I wasn't going to just kind of spread kind of malicious stuff like that. So anyway, and then I talked with Mike, and he kind of came out the guns a blazing there.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I think the big thing in the story though wasn't just about Igor's performance in the Sharks' eyes, but also too how the Sharks are covering the 2024 draft from the Russian prospects perspective. Confirmed what I've said many times on this podcast to you guys. I probably have confirmed it already myself to you guys, but the Sharks do have another Russian area scout and Nikolai Latikin, well regarded, but he lives in Ukraine, and so it's been a challenge for him to get over to Russia for live viewings and to speak with players and coaches there, right? And so it appears that the Sharks have kind of done sort of a combo thing here with Eronko not quite living up to his job there, and so they sent their Czech/Slovakian scout Martin Unak, I believe, and they sent him there for live viewings of Russian prospects. And in terms of the actual discussions, talking with the Russian prospects, they have left that with Latikin, but that's over Zoom. It's not perfect. But I did think that was illuminating for Mike to kind of share exactly how the Sharks are covering the 2024 draft prospects. Obviously, there's a Demidov, right? Salayev too, right? Yep. So there's a couple of very intriguing ones, at the top of the draft. And Mike feels like they're covered between live viewings and conversations on Zoom and video viewings too.
That'd be very interesting to see if we are sitting at that like
number 2, number 3, right? And I don't. Some people assume, the Sharks are going to go Russian, and I don't assume that. The more I think about it, the more I don't know this for a fact yet, and so I will not report it as such. But I would still guess that the Sharks never got a meeting with Michkov, that he didn't want to come here. This would be my guess. Still a guess. I do want to say it's still my kind of guess, educated guess. I will find out one day.
Maybe Grier will tell us one day. One day.
Someone will let it slip years from now. But
he wouldn't meet with us or whatever.
In that case, then I think you can't at all.
Also, they drafted Igor Eronko in the same draft, so it's not
right.
Like
you can't at all then put any of it on. I mean, obviously, the Shark situation is such that a player may not want to play there, but with that specific player, Michkov, you can't blame the Sharks for not drafting a guy that didn't want to meet with them. Especially a kind of an 18-year-old who has done nothing in the league, right? And I'm for players calling their shot and having agency and whatnot. So more power to Matvey if that's how he approached things. But teams also have the right to be miffed by it and to be turned off by it, and to not take that chance, obviously, too, that high in the draft on somebody that flat out made, signals to you that he doesn't want to play for you. But again, I don't know that for a fact, so I'm still trying to nail that down. But
Smith's doing fine. It's fine.
Yeah, both players are doing fine. Michkov and Smith are both doing fine. But anyway, though, so I don't know. It's interesting. And then Mike also did say that they do plan on hiring somebody again, but they're taking their time. Obviously, they want to make the right decision. They made a mistake, a clear mistake with Eronko here, and so they don't want that to happen again. And so they're, I guess, they'll take their time, but they'll cover that area too. I think that I think some fans are worried. Oh, what about this draft? I mean, the coverage in terms of the scouting for this draft is pretty much already done. I mean, we're in March, KHL season, KHL playoffs are in the middle of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you're not going to hire somebody now unless you have somebody like immediate that you think is great.
And that you already know of and stuff like that.
Yeah, like, and so sort of Sharks' opinion of this draft, 2024 draft, is pretty much nearly done. I mean, in all levels, not just Russian hockey, but obviously NCAA is headed toward the Frozen Four and whatnot, and whatever, right? So all levels are nearing the end of their seasons, and so you probably wouldn't hire a guy right now anyway. And so anyway, so we'll see if they do hire. And obviously, I know it's a I think the other part of it too is it's obviously a black mark on the Grier regime that this happens, and this happened so quickly after you hire somebody. There's no um running away or denying that. But I do think it's good though that they saw the mistake early and they got rid of the mistake early. And so hopefully I think any company does make mistakes in hires, so you can give some degree of a pass there that you're not going to hit on every hire in a company. And so hopefully the next guy that they hire in a very obviously important region of hockey, they hit on it.
Currently, I have Demidov as number 2 on my draft ranking.
Oh, do you really? Okay.
So that's a problem. Not a problem, but yeah, Demidov is.
I mean, are you concerned about it? I mean, after hearing Mike Grier's explanation of how they have the Russian sort of prospects covered,
I'd be way more concerned if this news came out after the draft. This just tells me that they're doing their due diligence before the draft to try and make sure that they've got the right information. So, and honestly, the 2 to 5 range of prospects for me is very 2 to 6 or so is like. Really similar, and you could just kind of take your pick of what kind of player you like, and I'm not that concerned about it. I think just you're going to pick the one that's going to appeal to you most on draft day, and there could be an argument for 4 prospects there at number 2, I think.
The big gap here obviously is okay, so you have some live viewings, right? You don't have like the following day to day, but I think people like over sort of worry about that part of it. Like if you're I don't know who might be a number 2, like an Arizona Coyote scout, right? You're not going to every Demidov game, I don't think. So that's not how it works. You got to cover. You have 1, maybe 2 Russian area scouts, and you got to go to different games. You can't literally go to one prospects games for an entire season. And so getting a couple weeks in, I hope that Eronko went to a couple of games this season. So you have something from him too. And to so honest, you have,
I would think they would probably pitch it.
They might just throw out any reports from him. But I'm just saying though that you have some live viewings of the player is my point. It's not like you have no live viewings of the player. I'm not sure if the Sharks got any live viewings of Michkov in his draft year last year. I'm not certain of that. That's another thing that I've wondered about that I'm not sure about. But anyway, so they have some live viewings of the player. They have assumed Zoom discussions with the player or his representation or coaches or management around the player, right? You have obviously all the video viewings I've talked about, which is not, obviously you don't want to draft player just based entirely on video viewings, I think, though I think some organizations do have a different philosophy on that. Some organizations have more of an emphasis on that. They're okay with that. But ideally, though, you probably don't want all video viewings. But you have enough of those, though, between all the guys that the Sharks or Mike Grier mentioned in the interview with me. So the only gap really is that one-on-one discussion with that player in season.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a gap. I'm not saying that's not a gap at all. That is some degree of a gap, right? Now, how much of a gap is it? How much do you worry about that? Can that be rectified by the combine when you should get one-on-one meeting with the player? That's my question. But so knowing all that, again, I would ask you, like, are you concerned that the Sharks do not have the Russian prospects covered for a 2024 draft? Just from everything you've heard at this point.
Not really.
Okay. I was wondering what you think. So yeah.
I think the 2 prospects that are super important to get right have been covered, and I think they're going to be in pockets of the draft that I'm not concerned about. Like if Silayev is at 11 and we have the Penguins pick at 11, he's there. You just pick him because I think he's a great prospect. I think I have him 8th or 7th on my list. If Demidov is at 4 and you're at 4 for some reason, or 3 or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think you just pick him. Or I think the 2 prospects that matter the most in the draft from Russia this year are covered in a way that in the pocket of the draft that I don't think you can go wrong with picking them in those areas. It's like this year or last year where I think there was a mistake not taking Michkov higher than 7th or whatever. I think they're not the Sharks specifically, but like 5 and 6. I think there was a mistake there, like because of whatever with Michkov, and also because of just scouting and the war and stuff like that. There's like an
I guess who was available at the time too. Like Smith was considered pretty close to there at number 4. But also too, we don't know if Michkov. We still don't know who exactly. We only know he met with Philadelphia. We don't know if he met with Montreal and Arizona. Obviously, with everything going on with Arizona, I mean, it will be a surprise if he met with Arizona and not with the Sharks. I'm just saying, Sharks are not in a great place, obviously, organizationally, or not organizational in terms of their record and attendance and all that stuff, right? But I mean, Arizona's whoever. I mean, if you meet with Arizona, you literally don't know if you're going to be playing Arizona 5 years from now, and so,
and one of the most productive prospects in the KHL from last year's draft, other than Michkov, is Igor Mishevsky, our 7th round draft pick. But whoever the Sharks are listening to from Russia anyway, they're doing an okay job.
Well, that probably was Latikin, because that's what I'm saying. Last year, and again, Latikin, I again stress, it's Nikolai Mishevsky, isn't it, by the way?
It's Igor.
Is it Igor?
Igor. I don't know if it's Igor or Igor,
but it's
Igor Mishevsky.
You are right. Okay.
Yeah.
Igor right. Okay.
Igor, right.
Nice, Igor.
Yeah, he's got 14 points, 45 games in the KHL. He's got 3 points in 7 playoff games so far. He's playing on like.
I've heard interesting things about him. That he's actually legitimately interesting offensively. Yeah, intriguing.
Yeah, he's a little slow. I think he's a little slow-footed, but he's got some offensive skills, and he bigger guy. He could develop into an actual prospect, which is crazy for a 7th round pick out of Russia in the year that he was drafted out of Russia. It's like kind of like throwing a dart at a dartboard and hoping you hit it. So he could develop into something though. So I mean, I'm just trying to say, like, I'm not worried. I think the Sharks will be fine from Russia's standpoint. But I would be more worried if this news came out after, especially if they had drafted a Russian prospect and they were like listening to this guy who, wasn't giving them the best information, wasn't putting the work in, that kind of thing. So
he's good.
Solid work.
Ivan Demidov. He's good. Hockey sense. Good.
Good. Yeah, I've been sending
skating good. Salad
sending
bar,
my
good.
game reports to Mike Grier, and I've been signing, at the bottom of it, and that's what I'm doing. It's but no, I just thought it was very cool that Grier was just put it all out there. He just
fuck around and find out.
It just
I learned my lessons out.
Yeah, you got to do your job, apparently. Cool. Anyway, did not expect that news, but very interesting overall. Because we were excited. I remember mentioning, and that was in the article too, is that we had mentioned that it seemed like a really
someone had told me some good things about him in the summer. I mean, look, he was assistant general manager for OMS for 3 years, so it's not like he was like out of nowhere hire. And also too he's well known for as an NHL KHL reporter before that. So he's not a guy that came out of nowhere there. And so, it obviously is disappointing just 6 months in and he's gone. But, yeah.
All right, let's move on. You have some thank yous to give out, and I'm going to stretch while you do it.
Yeah, we're going to get to our top 10 prospects after this. Keegan and I both have our list. But before we get to that, I just wanted to thank people that have recently contributed to my travel fund, and I'm on this entire road trip here. It's been a long one. I think I mentioned all the cities. Got there some interesting weather. It was 70 degrees in Philadelphia when I got there. It was 25 and snowing in Chicago the last couple of days. Not like a heavy snow, but just a light like snowflakes. It actually was quite nice, but it was cold though. And even here in Nashville, it's not quite as warm as you'd expect. So yeah, so it's been interesting on that end, and also too, it's been an interesting road trip. Just a lot of time spent in the locker room. And I think that the mood of the team is still pretty good. I think it's almost better than in the mood, let's say in a Pittsburgh or whatever, where there's expectations and you're right there in the playoffs, but you can't make that run. And so I think that's a lot worse. Whereas the Sharks are in a place where it's like, well, obviously you are where you are in the standings. I think the Sharks were officially eliminated from the playoffs at some point during this road trip, and I think though the mood is pretty good though, and guys are still playing hard. I think that's one thing we didn't really talk about when we were talking about the games over the last week and a half here. But in every game, the Sharks have been in. And in every game, I don't think you can say that there's a game where they mailed it in, which I know is not a high bar. But I think guys in general are trying hard. They're playing for their jobs. They're playing for the team. They're playing for their goalies. Trying to win a game for a Cooley. Trying to perform well in front of a Chrona. So I think guys are doing that. And so overall, I think that at least at this point, we have about 17 games left at this point, or less than that. Ooh, thank goodness. It's been a long season. So 14 games, I think now, that the Sharks are still together, it seems like, at this particular moment. And anything can happen, obviously, over the next month or so. But at this moment, though, it feels like the team is still together, still playing for each other and all that good stuff. And so overall, it's not as dire a room as you would expect for where the team is in the standings. So anyway, before I wanted to thank people who have contributed recently. Kay Moore, who actually with points paid for my flight from Chicago to Nashville.
Nice.
Yeah. And Jazz Deep and also Michael K are recent contributors to the travel fund, which you can find at San Jose Hockey Now, or I think there's a button for that, the tip jar. And I do plan on going to Vegas for the draft, and so if you guys want to help on that, I'll still be traveling. I do believe that this will probably be my last road trip of the season. I did want to travel a little bit more here. I get every city I've been in on this road trip, someone has asked me, another reporter or someone's like, why are you here? What are you doing? Why are you still traveling? And
dedication.
It's but also too though, I still had some money from contributions from this year, and so I didn't want that to go to waste. You guys have really overwhelmed me with your support over the years, and so I wanted to do that a little bit to kind of spend it out, right? And so yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Also, too, before this, my last road game was before the All-Star break. It was January 31st in Anaheim, and I didn't want that to be the last time I was on the road this season, because that seems like too long a time to be away from the team. You really, I can't put out everything that I hear or everything that I talk with the players and whatnot. It's not what it's not professional to do that, but I do get a much better sense of where the team is at than if I don't travel with them for 3 months at a time, which would have been if wasn't on this trip, 3 months at the end of the season. And so yeah, so I think it's very and I think you can see in the stories that I've put out that I mean, that's like the it's better than the tip of the iceberg. I'm giving you guys more than that, but like there is some stuff that I didn't put out, but stuff like the talking with Mike about Eronko, some of the other stuff that I put out there, right? That I think it shows in the sort of the how deep the coverage has been in the last week. That I'm using your money well, and
secret slip on the road. That's what it is. You get them out of the fortress of being
honestly,
in San Jose.
Honestly, they do, and players also see you on the road, and they respect that too, especially in this day of age, right? Where just reporters aren't traveling on the road as much anymore. It's just not feasible financially, right? For whoever that they work for, and so players appreciate it. They do, and so yeah, so it definitely helps with building that trust and whatnot. And so anyway, I wanted to thank everybody. Not just I mentioned the 3 people: K Moore, Jazz Deep, Michael K, recent contributors, but I also want to thank everybody. Beginning of the season, I always get a wave of contributors. I also met Matt Dynan, who's a consistent contributor. I met him in Chicago. And so I wanted to thank him too for his consistent contributions. It was great to see you, Matt. But yeah, I can't do it without you. And hopefully this all leads to good stuff. And so next year when we're talking, or 2 years or 3 years from now when we're talking about your contributions, it's because I'm at a playoff series clinching win, or at the win that clinches a playoff spot for the Sharks, or something, way better than I've been watching on the ice here.
Yeah.
But anyway, so thank you to everybody.
Beautifully said. Love it. I think you're probably very excited to be back home and eat some
I will be,
home
though, yeah.
cooking.
Yeah, I miss Mushu.
Miss Mushu. That's the most important thing. Missing Mushu. But yeah, very cool. Thank you to everybody who gave on the travel fund, and Sheng, very much appreciate it. We all appreciate you, Sheng, for your continued work for reporting on the Sharks.
Thank you.
Oh, it's time.
Yes, I'm setting up for my top 10 list.
It's time. How are we gonna do this? Do you want to do
let's
1
go
to 10?
let's go 10 through 1. We kind of know our number 1, but still we can do the last 2 together, because we know who our number 1 will be. But I think up to there, though, I bet we'll have some differences, I suspect. After we get through Will Smith, spoiler alert, number 1, after we get through Will Smith, we'll do honorable mentions.
Great.
I did want to say too that I talked with a lot of people about this list, or maybe not. I talked with 4 people, but scouts, Sharks people. I talked with significant or I guess a meaningful number of people is a better word, but meaningful number of people about this list. And I will come out with a story soon with more of their kind of more of their thoughts. And I have some really good ones, and some of them that will make you guys upset, I think. But they're honest reflections of people who watch this game, and this is what they think of the Sharks prospects. There's some really good stuff too, I heard too, obviously, so I'll share some of that more so with the article. So this one right now will be just sort of the unveiling of the list and some kind of teases of some of the information that I got. And on your side, I'm interested to hear what you think of my picks, and also your explanations for your picks. And so let's get started with number 10. So drum roll.
Drum roll.
Yeah, and I guess I'll go first, and then we'll go to you. Yeah. So
yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
I did not, full disclosure, did not consult anybody other than the voices in my own head.
Well, and you're good at this though, and so that's a good voice in your head, right? So
that's the one, and past me, I guess, because I read through my I think it was right after the draft, my ranking last time. So
all right, so you consult with multiple people, because you can argue that a past version of yourself is a different
past
person,
me, current me.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Who's your number 10 from
number 10? Number 10, I have Kasper Halttunen. Nice. And Kasper, I still hear the same things that we talk about. Incredible shot. He's got the size. So there is all that is mouth watering, but there's still obviously just the overall part of the game, the motor, all those kind of things, right? And so he's at this spot. He is a ceiling guy. Nice. There are guys that I have in honorable mentions. I feel a lot better will hit their potential than a Halttunen, or who will be in the NHL, be real NHL contributors than a Halttunen. But if Halttunen hits though, he's going to be a second line guy, maybe even better. But let's just say a second line guy to be conservative, right? If he hits, and a power play guy too. And so that's, if he hits, is better than the ceiling of some of the honorable mentions probably on this list. But he is a ceiling guy though, which also means that he may never see an NHL game in his life. And to be honest, so we're being honest. And very so true. He is number 10 on my list.
I love it. I'm not going to talk at all about Halttunen because he is also on my list, but he's not number 10.
Okay.
Number 10 for me is Luca Cagnoni.
Okay.
I think he was 12 at the beginning of the year for me. Putting up the best WHL season this year as a defenseman kind of moves him up 2 spots. No, it's more than that. He's not doing anything really different than he was last year. It's very similar. He's showing a little bit more footwork, a little bit more agility, which is kind of leading to a little bit more points and a little bit more utility on the power play. And I like that. And he doesn't have huge defensive lapses as a smaller defenseman, which is what you worry about, is that your small defenseman can't play any defense. He can. He's just not, going to play the type of defense that you would expect from somebody his size. Or he's going to play what you think a 5'9" defenseman is going to play like. He plays like that. But he's very calm with the puck. He makes great decisions with the puck. He knows how to break out well, and he just doesn't panic. He holds the blue line well. And he plays very, very well with his D partner. So I really like Luca Cagnoni. I think the issue is always going to be his projection because there's just not a lot of defenders that look like him, and his skills are not elite like some small defenders that have come out. He's not Quinn Hughes. He's not even Lane Hudson, who's doing great, who hasn't even made the NHL yet either. So there's a lot of questions. But I think the thing with Cagnoni is you just give him time, you give him minutes, and then his game runs on his brain, kind of like Henry Thrun's does. Thrun's has a little bit more physical talents that Cagnoni doesn't. And if you just keep giving him time and minutes, there could be an NHL player that develops out of Cagnoni despite his size. And you like the fact that he can put up offense. So I like him. I like Luca Cagnoni. So he's improving for me. And he was a great pick in the 4th round. Extremely good value.
Yes, I do agree with that. I am going to hold my thoughts for Cagnoni for later, so
Great.
whatever that means.
Great. Sounds good.
But I will say that I will hold my thoughts. And so let's go with number 9.
Great.
Keep you guys listening. 9? Number 9, I have Cam Lund. Nice. And Cam Lund, obviously, a very projectable package of size and skill. I think that this year has been a good year for him at Northeastern, so it's been a step up from last year. I think that he may still be missing sort of that, just that sort of separating sort of quote unquote eliteness, right, to his game, to his season, right. He just hasn't put quite that together, right. But I think he's been good though. And I did think of him and Halttunen. I got some pushback in terms of, well, there's other guys that you should have in there maybe. And so I'll get to that either in my story or at the end of this show when we talk about honorable mentions. So I will say that both Lund and Halttunen were, to some of the people I talked to, like, you don't really need to have them. And not that they're bad prospects, but that they just weren't as firm on this list as I don't know, as I might have them right now, just having him at 9 and Halttunen at 10. So I think there are still questions about his game, but anyway, so I have Cam Lund at number 9.
Holding my thoughts for Cam Lund.
Okay. Exciting. Tease.
Man, this is great. We should do this without
a lot of disagreement.
Yeah. I think it'll end up pretty similar at the end. My number 9 is Tomas Bordeleau.
Okay.
I think Bordeleau was 8 when I did the ranking last time, so he hasn't moved down by much. Moved down by 1. He's had a good little not revival is not the right word. A little renaissance here in the NHL that I think is kind of up to my hopes for him, even though he went down on this list.
Me too.
That we've already kind of talked about this episode, but he still makes the top 10 because I do think there is an NHLer here. It just needs to be more consistent and probably on the wing overall. So I like Bordeleau. He's still going to stick in the top 10 for now.
Our arbitrary cutoff, by the way, was about 50 games, and so that 50 NHL games. So just so you know, for what's coming up,
Yep.
William Eklund will not be on our list because he's obviously played too many games and he's not going back to the Barracuda anytime soon.
Sad.
But actually, just to segue, at number 8, I have Thomas Bordeleau.
Nice.
And actually, if this recent stretch of Bordeleau and also some of the stuff that I've heard about him on the wing and I've seen with the Barracuda, if I hadn't seen this in the last month or a couple of months or so, I might have not even had him in the top 10.
You might not have. Yeah, exactly.
Because I've talked a lot about a player that, not just Bordeleau specifically, but players that have some skill, but refuse or won't play, won't adjust their game to the NHL. Those players have no future in the NHL. They don't. If you're Alexander Ovechkin, you can get away with it because you're Alexander Ovechkin, but you got to be Alexander fucking Ovechkin or a guy like that to really get away with it. And Thomas Bordeleau is not that. And so seeing this sort of renewed renewed commitment to just playing a quieter game and not forcing offense, not chasing offense as much, I think has me sort of higher on Bordeleau than I would have been 3 months ago, I would say. And I think that there are some inconsistencies. That's what I hear from people who watch him a lot with the Barracuda, scouts who watch him a lot, that it's still up and down. But I have definitely liked what I've seen with the Sharks in this little stretch. And so it gives you a sense of that there's sort of hope there, that there is some kind of turning of the corner here. And I have said this before, that if he hits, I think that he is going to be better than some of the guys that are higher than him on the list. The talent is there, I think, to be like a second line scorer type. But whether or not he reaches it or not, we'll see. But definitely, I've seen a lot better play from him in this recent stretch, and I think some real hope that he's going to make it as a Shark at least. He was looking very much like a candidate to get traded and maybe find his game elsewhere, or maybe not. And he was definitely headed in that direction. But now, though, I'm seeing that maybe it'll happen as a Shark for him.
Yep. I agree. My number 8 is Kasper Halttunen. I went with Halttunen as a
high on him. Okay,
and I liked what you said with
it's a ceiling pick.
Exactly, it's a ceiling pick. The reason why he's not an honorable mention, and I see him and Lund as very similar prospects, and not to spoil. Similar prospects in the fact that they are both second-round picks that were picked for some tools.
Right, who?
And
who is he similar to?
Not similar in the way they play, but similar.
No, who to who?
To Lund.
To Lund. Okay.
In terms of their, like, I don't know what the way to put it is, like their grading as a prospect in terms of their value, I guess. Not that they play entirely similar games, because they don't. But Kasper Halttunen just has a little bit higher of a ceiling for me that makes me want to push him up higher. There's just undeniable tools with Kasper Halttunen that are not present in a lot of guys on this list. And the issue is obviously that he doesn't play a game that's rounded to be effective. Like at any, like he's doing well in junior hockey right now, but it's not like he's destroying junior hockey.
Right.
I think he could do another year or 2 years in junior hockey and then be destroying junior hockey, but he just has to round out a game around his very special tools, which he does have. That kind of put him this high for me. It is a ceiling pick, though, and it could fall flat on his face. He never plays in the NHL, like you said. But if he hits, then he's a power play scorer, and he's a second line
big guy,
scoring forward, big guy who can at least give you passable, even strength minutes. So you just have to hit it.
I think going with the Ovechkin comp, right? Like he is Ovechkin in junior, basically, right? And he's putting up amazing numbers, right? But again, will he be that at this level? That's what we're trying to figure out. I want to also mention another thing too, since I've already talked about Halttunen, that and I think your picks will probably be the similar in the sense that it's a mix, right? We try to mix ceiling and certainty. Some guys we give a little more like, and I'll talk about it soon, but some guys, if we're really certain that they'll be this kind of player, Even if it's a lesser player than, say, a Kasper, Halttunen ceiling, then that makes him a better prospect because we feel 80% sure he's going to be this NHL kind of contributor, as opposed to Halttunen, who is like 1 in 5 or 1 in 10. I don't know, 1 in 10
exactly.
kind of
Something
shot in the dark that this guy is going to be a top contributor at NHL level. So anyway, though, my number 7 is personal favorite of yours, Danil Gushchin.
Hey, we matched one. We're both 7 on Danil Gushchin.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So we can both talk about him. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So my bid on Gushchin isn't up yet, but Gushchin had a upper body injury that was tough for him to recover from, and so he's kind of just getting back to speed. And so I think I'm fairly certain that's why Bordeleau got recalled ahead of him. Is that Gushchin, they want to get him back to speed. I'm pretty sure Gushchin's going to get called up at some point soon, especially with the Barracuda falling further and further out of the playoff race. I think they're like up to like 19 or down to 19 points back or something like that. I think for a while there they were like 10, 12. They were sort of in like, hey, we get one winning streak, we'll be close. But I think that we've moved on from that thinking, and so I would think that he will get a call up soon. And I still have the same questions about this game that the last time we did a prospects sort of top 10 prospects thing, and sort of just the over the summer. I still think maybe there was more I hoped for in terms of the quickness and strength thing, but there have been gains in that area for sure, and he's gone from a good AHL player to a elite premier AHL player, and I'm excited to see that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I watched him. I think it was a couple days ago. He had an assist. It was like a secondary, I think. I don't know. I don't think he's fully come back from his injury, and he's a streaky. I think he's back, like he's healthy and all that, but he needs time. He's a streaky player in general too. So sometimes you catch Gushchin and it's just not his night, or it's not his string of nights. But then you catch him sometimes and you're like, this kid's on fire. And I think there's also a real chance again that Gushchin never makes the NHL. But I love him so much. And
he's already made the NHL.
That's just true. Never makes the NHL
as a consistent contributor, right?
Yes, there's definitely that chance because he is still a small, skilled forward that is way too light. But you never know. He's got all the skill in the world. So.
I like his compete though, and that's why his consistency of compete is there.
Yes,
and so that's why I've put him ahead of Bordeleau. If it just was based on skill, he wouldn't be in my top 10. I don't care for players like that unless they're so immensely skilled that they're gonna dominate the league with their skill. But there are very few players like that, and very, very skilled players still, nonetheless, they aren't good enough to do that. And so it's his compete that gets him into my top 10, and that's there. I see that, I like that, and so I think that gives him a chance.
Yeah, I think maybe all in the skill in the world was a little bit too much high praise for me, but he has a lot of skill, and the compete is pretty much there night in, night out. It's just not always the impact is there offensively, but he is still one of like the Barracuda's most dangerous forward pretty much every night. So Goose. I'm super excited that hopefully he gets called up. He starts getting back in to game speed and gets called up.
Sure.
Hopefully. Who's your number 6?
Number 6, I have Henry Thrun, and Henry is not a ceiling guy. He's a guy that probably ends up at best as your 4 or 5 defenseman. But I feel pretty good about that, and nothing I've seen this year takes changes my mind on it. I know that he's had bad games, bad plays this year, but he's also had good games and good plays. And what I see is a guy that, so far of what I've seen, is a guy that hasn't taken the bad games too hard, Like he'll have a bad game or a bad shift, and he'll come back and have a good shift or a good game. And so I think he's been okay on this team that is, I think, a team that's really bad for defenseman's confidence or goalie's confidence. If I was on this team, I'd be out of the league as a prospect. I think I don't think I have the mental fortitude to deal with the fucking Columbus Cannon in my head. That thing is really loud, really fucking loud. You are not prepared for that if you've never been to a game. And I actually have been to Columbus. I went to a game a couple of years ago. Still wasn't prepared this time for the Cannon.
Love it.
They played it. The Cannon goes before the game too. That's the one I wasn't ready for. And even when it goes in game, I'm like, oh, what the? Anyway, though, so yeah. I think that I think Henry has the ability and the mental fortitude to handle the Columbus Cannon, and so yeah, I like overall what I've seen from him. I still see a guy that defends well, is learning how to defend better, that moves the puck well, still learning to be better in those areas. So guy that is not great in any area, but is good in a number of areas and makes mistakes, but is getting better in general. And so I feel pretty good that he's going to end up right. Kind of like I said, like with Henry, like if I were to put odds on him being a pretty good 4 or 5 defenseman in the future, I would say I'm 70% certain of that. Kasper Halttunen, how certain do I feel that he is going to be a consistent top 6 scorer in the NHL level? I might say 10%. And so that's sort of explanation of why Thrun is that far ahead of, say, a Halttunen. I will say, though, that people I've talked to, that there's pushback on Thrun that high. Some people I talked to, some scouts I talked to are a little more ceiling people. And so they have Thrun lower because they just don't see the ceiling as being quite again, their picks are a little more ceiling oriented. But I think too that there's an argument that on the Sharks prospects list that number 6 and below that are very very open. So Gushchin could be your number 6, Bordeleau could be your number 6. If you really like a Halttunen or a Lund or maybe even a Cagnoni, that maybe you put him up that high, and so that's another thing that I got from the people I talked to.
To ruin the fun, Thrun is my number 6 as well.
Okay.
Same thing. I think there's a very good world where or a good team where Thrun is on your third pairing and doing fine. He's succeeding in a very difficult role for a very young defenseman.
And he's done okay,
Succeeding, I guess, is a relative term.
Look what happened with Halttunen, right? Like he really was having trouble on a consistent basis, I think, and this is why he's comparison.
It's a very good comparison to one kept his head above water and one couldn't do it on a nightly basis. And Thrun is keeping his head above water, despite, you're right, some errors and sometimes he really just does make some boneheaded decisions occasionally, but most of the time he takes care of the puck. So I think you're on balance okay with Thrun right now.
On this team, again, relative to what's going on around him, right? Yeah.
So you want him to develop more and get more minutes, get more reps, and I like Thrun, and this is not a ceiling pick, like you said. This is a safe pick.
This is a floor pick, but it's a good floor. It's a sturdy floor. It's a good hardwood here. So
I really wonder. It's good hardwood. I wonder if our top 5 is going to be the same.
We'll have the same players probably. But
I imagine.
I wonder how our orders will be. I think that's
except for I put Theo Jacobson at number 2. I apologize.
Yeah. I think that you are yanking my chain, sir. So
yes, I am. All right, let's go to 5.
Okay, number 5. Number 5, I have Philip Beestead.
God, we're just copying each other, Sheng.
Oh, are we?
Well, it's okay.
Hopefully, you have some drama at the end here, right? But Will Philip, obviously, this season, the World Juniors, we talked a lot about it, has been a little bit of a step back. He was on a trajectory, I think, of being a bit higher on these rankings. But still, though, the tools are there, the speed, the size. I think those are still all apparent. And it's not like he's had like an awful season. So I think that while I would consider this a step back, the tools are there. Actually, some people I talk to, they actually think he should be higher up and higher above certain people on his list because they like actually his ceiling a little bit more. But for now, though, I'm gonna have Beasted at number 5.
Yeah, Philip Beasted's my number 5 too, and it's sad because Philip Beasted was 3. Or no, wait, I think he was 4.
4.
4
I don't know. I think he was
before.
4. It's still, I don't want to say sad. I mean, he's still a good prospect. It's not like he fell off the face
Yeah.
of the earth. So
No, it's just I didn't see anything this year from the times that I've seen Beasted play.
a
that
leap,
I
right? He didn't take that
a
leap
leap.
that he did the year before. Let's give him credit for last year too, right? He was
Yeah.
SHO Rookie of the Year, right?
Yeah.
And he definitely took a leap from his draft year. And
Exactly.
so I want to give him that credit too. But yeah, this year we didn't see it.
Yeah, it's just you want to see that leap, and he didn't take it. I really thought he would, just because of how much he did improve last year, and then nothing. And then he wasn't very effective with the World Juniors either. And that was his time to kind of shine on that team.
Right.
And because the year before he was excellent and played very well with Leo Carlson and all that. It kind of showed that when he had to be the primary driver, it wasn't there. Offensively, at least. He's still, again, toolsy pick, toolsy prospect. There is a ceiling there if it all goes together, because he does have a very interesting. He's got a very long stride. He can move pretty quickly. When he does get ahead of steam and he actually uses some of his puck handling strengths, he's pretty interesting to watch. But it's just like finding offense for him seems to be a problem. Like knowing what to do with the puck when you get into the offensive zone, or connecting plays once you get the puck back, seems to be a problem. He doesn't seem dangerous, pretty much, is the way that I would say when I'm watching him in the offensive zone. So needs more time, and I really wonder what the development plan is for him in terms of staying in Sweden another year, coming to the AHL, that kind of thing. Curious to see what they pick with that, because he could thrive on smaller ice, because he's a big guy, he can be physical. I wish he'd be a little bit more physical sometimes, but yeah, I'm not down on the pick, but I think other players have moved up for sure.
Yeah. I would say that I talked with one scout that really liked him still, and I talked to another that did not, and thought that number 5 was actually the point where the Sharks prospects pool becomes very open to debate. So, so yeah. So take that for what you will. Number 4, and I feel like we're also going to match up here. Number 4, I have David Edstrom, and David Edstrom. I don't know if, from what I understand, if the ceiling is quite as high, but I would say that from what I understand, though, that the floor is safer. So here's a guy that I feel better. Let's say even comparing him versus Beasted, that based on what I've heard, I feel better that Edstrom is going to be what he's going to be at the NHL level than I do with a Beasted hitting his ceiling and being a better player. And so that's what I'm gonna get. Also, too, obviously, Edstrom is a year younger, and he actually, funny enough, his track isn't that far from a beast in terms of just the production he's had in his D+1 year, right? And so that's kind of funny. So they're kind of following the same track, just he's a year behind. So maybe Edstrom will take that leap next year. But anyway, so maybe Edstrom, number 4.
Same. He has a more projectable offensive game than Beasted does, and he's coupled that with good frame and like he just seems like a safer pick, but also I think he could actually contribute into a top 9 role. We'll see. Obviously, he's got a lot of development to go, but he just seems like he's got a more well-rounded game than Beasted does, if he does not have the type, even though he doesn't have the type of tools that Beasted does. So I'm picking him above Beasted only because I think he's just more projectable overall. And I think it was smart by the Sharks to to target him, even though people's immediate reaction was, well, Phil Biestat's supposed to be your third line center. Why are we getting David Edstrom?
You can't make plans like that. You have no idea.
You never know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, like I've talked about this before. Like we have this top 10 list here. Like
half of them could bust.
If 4 of these guys are like really, really good NHL players, the Sharks will be thrilled.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. So you can't think that way. You can't make up plans. Oh, Phil Biestat's he's going to be our 2C, so we don't need to trade for a future.
He's going to be our
stop trading for.
So
yeah.
So yeah,
let's not draft. Let's not draft Celebrini at number 1 because we have. Well, you can't think that way. So
no, it never works like that, and you never should.
Never works that way.
It never. If both somehow Edstrom and Biestadt became fantastic 3Cs, you'd be laughing because then you just put one on your 4C. Like
exactly.
It never is going to happen. A, and then B, who gives a shit?
and hey, you know what? I know that teams have boards and they kind of project it out that way. So I'm not trying to say that like it's not something that's done, but the teams have their boards and they still keep picking up players that that duplicate each other, that that sort of thing, right? They don't stop at that point. Is all we're saying, that you can have your boards and your projections and hopefully it all works out, and teams do the same thing. But you can't stop picking up good players just because you think like, oh, we have this, we have that, we have this and that. We have Luca Cagnoni putting up, a point and a half or a point and a quarter in a WHL. We don't need to worry about a future power play quarterback. That's our future power play quarterback. No.
You just keep drafting them.
Yeah, you keep drafting them, and hopefully one of them is your Erik Karlsson. But anyway, though, let's go to number 3, and let me ask you actually, because I think we're gonna have the same 3 names, but in a different order. So should we just go our top 3 right now and then talk about all the guys? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do top 3.
Okay.
So Theo Jacobson.
Yes. Timofey Spitzerov.
Eli Barnett.
Yeah, and Mason Bopit.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay, you want to go first? You go first. Yeah.
All right. I have Smith, Mukhamadullin, and Musty.
Damn it, that's what I have. Yes, I have. Well, I'll go back. I have Smith number 1, Mukhamadullin number 2, and Musty number 3.
Wow. So it was really, really tough between Mukhamadullin and Musty. Really tough.
It wasn't that tough for me. So maybe that's a difference.
That's the difference then. Yeah.
So let's talk first about let's talk about the difference. We can talk about both Musty and Mukhamadullin, because I think there's a legit debate there at number 2. But I think that with reason why it wasn't so close for me is, once again, guys putting up points at lower levels, like, who I don't know, who cares? And I shouldn't be so mean about that, but I look at a Mukhamadullin and I see all that skill set, tool set that is there, and its production on the ice at the AHL level. I look at Musty. It's not like I can't see players' tool set, right? And so Musty has a lot of good tools, but I don't necessarily see that many elite kind of traits with him. For one, I would say, right? And whereas Mukhamadullin, you see, I don't know if it gets quite to elite, but that size skill combination, right? It's not that far from it though. And also too, the position he plays too. Musty is a winger. Mukhamadullin is a defenseman. For Musty to be a more valuable player than what I see Mukhamadullin will be, I see Mukhamadullin as kind of a middle pairing defender on a good team, who can contribute at both special teams. Like, Musty's got to score a lot of points to be more valuable than a all situations middle pairing guy. Like, Musty's got to be basically like a fringe first liner, easy second liner, but / fringe first liner. I don't know, like, trying to think of a guy like TJ Oshie or something like that. I think Oshie plays center, so it's not a great comp, but just a guy that I thought of in terms of just, Musty's got to be really good.
He plays wing.
Yeah. Huh?
Oshie plays wing.
Yeah, he does both though, right? He
I think he used to play center.
Yeah. Maybe I'm going back years ago with that.
Well, when he was with St. Louis, he did, but I think since he's been with Washington, he's played wing pretty much.
But the point is, though, is that Musty has to be a real good player to be more valuable than a Shakir Mukhamadullin in my mind in the future. And so, as exciting as Musty is with his production right now, again, how that translates, I think that's big. And I think, like I said, there's an argument for. I'm not saying if you have Musty high, I'm not saying that is a bad choice or indefensible decision there. Oh, and you're right about Oshie. So Oshi's been mostly at wing. So
yeah.
So okay. So actually, maybe that's
sometimes
a better comp than I thought.
Yeah.
Then, because they're both sort of like intimidating physical packages, right? And so that's not a terrible comp in some ways. And so anyway,
yeah.
So I think I think that's a big part of what it comes down to, that that they're both Silling guys, but
Yes.
I can see Mukhamadullin Silling like really right in front of me. Like Mukhamadullin has to clean up things in his game in terms of just decision making, things that I think experience takes care of a lot of the flaws in Mukhamudullin's game. We've already seen the highs at the NHL level, I think. And so so I think if it all comes together for both players, I like Mukhamadullin more as a player than Musty.
Interesting. And again, I'm not disagreeing, because I still have Mukhamadullin 2 and Musty 3. I think the reason why it was so tough for me is just both players are doing very well. Sure. Both players are performing above what you would want them to be doing right now. And Mukhamadullin, I agree, has like, he just has it, and you kind of just, that's really, so you never want to hear that from your scouts, that he just like has it, but he feels like he has it. You watch him most of the time, and obviously he makes mistakes, and there's times when he's getting killed in the Barracuda because the Barracuda are super bad. But he really does. He has all of the tools necessary to be an effective, good 3 defenseman, number 3 probably. And you really hope that that's something that developed and is going to keep developing. And he has taken steps like as recently as like a year or 2 years ago to really improve. So I really do like his projection. Musty, the reason why it's getting closer for me is just because he's had such a ramp up. Like, he was very good last year, but he had an illness that kept him out for a while, and he kind of pushed him down some boards. And then this year, it's like he's just really exploded in his offensive impact. And when I watch him, I watched him this weekend actually. He just is kind of commanding presence on the ice. Like his line mates like Dvorsky and Goyette, and they don't always play the same lines together, but sometimes he's the one who's really leading the charge there. And it really feels like he's becoming a dominant puck carrier, not just like a secondary scorer or like a peripheral passer kind of guy, which I thought maybe he was going to be. It's like he's becoming a more effective power forward. Okay. And he has the skills and the skating and a good hockey sense behind it, that if it all comes together, I think there is a ceiling for Musty that is already starting to like kind of ramp up. Okay. And leading the OHL in points per game doesn't hurt, especially because he's still 18. He's like a July birthday, so he's young. He didn't get a full year last year because of illness, and that ramp up is something that, like, when you watch or when you look back on prospects like Couture or like those kind of guys, that ramp up is what you see. It's that like exponential growth curve, even if it is juniors or whatever, that they fit a mold, they have the skills, and there's that exponential growth that like 2 years from now they're in the NHL kind of thing. Not that that's what's going to happen, may not, but that's why I get excited about Musty, is that like he's fitting all of those things. And to like Wyatt Johnston's a good one. That similar thing happened where it was under scouted, and then he had that exponential ramp up the year afterwards, and people started to take notice. And then 2 years later, he's in the NHL. And Wyatt Johnston's not like, I mean, he's not a perfect comp, right? But he's not a guy that has like every single skill and is like a superstar, but he has enough of everything and a very good hockey sense and skill and tools that make it happen. So again, Musty could still bust, and he's going to have many lows and many highs, and he plays with some great line mates, and they definitely help. And Dvorsky does a lot of the, I won't say like dirty work, but a lot of the heavy lifting, kind of like Ryan Leonard does with Will Smith's line. Right. Dvorsky has a lot of those qualities. So, but Musty is really improving for me. So
Okay.
that's why he's moved up from, because originally he was beneath B stat on my list, and now he's moved up to above B stat, above Edstrom. So
that's a really good argument. And so yeah, well, we might see Musty at number 2 on his. I mean, Mukhamadullin might graduate, but might even be ahead of Mukhamadullin next year. So that is a great argument for him. I will say one thing on Mukhamadullin on his behalf is that I've talked to scouts and he's changed minds of scouts this year.
yes.
Whereas scouts had a notion of him coming into the year, and the more they see him on the Barracuda, the more they like him. And so I think that's another thing that is kind of convinced me or makes me so high on him.
Absolutely. And again, I still got him above because I've liked every time I've watched Mukhamadullin. It's like he'll make mistakes, but I still love watching him. So, and then Will Smith's our number 1.
Yeah, number 1.
And he's done nothing but show out. There's still lots to work on with Will Smith, but I think the ceiling mixed with his production, his year, it's undeniable that he's had a very good year, even if he's on a very, very good team.
So. Yeah, I think he's almost underrated. Like people put him immediately behind the Carlson and Fantillis, and even the Michkovs, right? And I think that from what I've seen, from what I heard, that there's people still see a first line player out of him. So I don't know why you're so quick to put him behind those guys, and maybe he will be behind those guys, or maybe not though. I think that sort of that story hasn't been written yet, and people have sort of written it already. I guess I would say.
I also just think it's absolutely insane how very good that draft is. Like we're gonna see some more years. Obviously, there's lots of players that either have to make it or not make it from that draft. But man, like it's already showing out. There's really good at the top end of that draft. That first round is nuts. All the way to Musty, who was 26, 27, or was 28. Yeah, he was 26. So all the way down to there. Great first round. That's it, except for our honorable mentions.
Yes. And let's kind of I think we've been talking for quite a while here, so let's not like spend forever on it, but I have 5 names that really stood out to me. So I don't know if you want to kind of do it that way. And the one name that I think everyone's going to be like, well, where's Luca Cagnoni on your list, right? And so that's number 1. And Luca Cagnoni is not on my list because I think that there is a worry that it's not just simply a size thing. It's more like if you're going to be that size, you have to be dynamic, right? And I think there's a lack of that in terms of, it's working at WHL, but is it going to work at the NHL? And so, but people like him a lot though. So I'm not saying like the 2 names that I have five guys here. The 2 names that I got the most pushback on, like maybe he should be there, or I get why he's not on it, but I still like the guy a lot. Are Cagnoni. And this might surprise you, Ethan Cardwell. And so those are the 2 guys that have really kind of stood out to the people that I've talked to of the honorable mentions. And these are all good prospects, by the way, still. So it's not to say that even if these guys, the other names I'm going to mention, they aren't mentioned or they're not getting huge support from the scouts, they're still on this list. No one said like, hey, what is this guy doing on your honorable mentions list? He's terrible. And so Cagnoni and Cardwell. And then I also have Furlong, Havelid, and Jack Thompson as sort of my if this was a top 15 list, they would be on it.
Interesting. I have Cam Lund. And Lund was like
11. Sure, yeah.
So he's the big one I think that's missing from my top 10. And I watched Lund as recently as the Beanpot, and I like Lund. It's an issue of where do you go from here, I think, for me, in terms of how do you develop into an NHLer with the tools that he has and with what he brings currently. He's getting there. He's getting better, obviously. He's had a good year. And I did see lots that I liked from Lund. It just wasn't as like shift in and shift out. And I think 200-foot game was more of an issue in general. It's not like he's lazy or doesn't try or anything. It just wasn't making an impact on the other end of the ice very much. So it's more of a where do you go from here? Is he the kind of guy that just doesn't have that ramp up and then sticks around the AHL and then can't really crack a roster because he doesn't have a standout skill, even if he is big-ish. It's tough. So I still like him at 11. I think he is going to stick around there until he gets that ramp up for me, or finds a specific skill that's going to take him farther for me.
Yeah, I
would. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I would say that I would say that the guy that was sort of my number 11 was not Cagnoni, actually. It was Cardwell. He was the guy that I most thought about putting into the back half of the top end and top 10, I'm sorry. And I would have taken out Lund or Halttunen. Yeah. And so I just wanted to throw that in that, people really like Cardwell's season.
My other ones, honorable mentions, Cardwell is in my top 15. Then I have Havelid. I still think Havelid, he's been fine in Sweden, and he it's just, again, it's another prediction of where do you go from here. He has specific tools. He's got a great shot. He's a little puck focused with his defense and can get lost. And he's not the best skater in general for his size. So it's how do you get all of those tools to, or those specific combinations to be an NHLer? It's tough, I think, with his projection. But I like him overall. Then I have Eric Pohlkamp, which is a late addition. Pohlkamp's kind of risen. He's a Bemidji State Beaver, and he's having a good season. It's kind of a late riser. He's just been steadily increasing his offensive output and his role with his team, and I like him when I watch him. There's definitely not a ceiling projection there for him. It's just a maybe NHL contributor kind of projection, I think. And he's also probably the best shooter, except for probably Mukhamadullin from the Sharks defenders. So he's got a great shot. And then I've not seen Jack Thompson play hockey, I don't think. I maybe have seen him because I watched some AHL Providence games. So I might have seen him, but I need to watch him play.
That's a little more just based on what people are telling me that they
probably would be in there, I think, in terms of if I had to put him in, he would probably be.
He might be a little more of a floor defenseman too. He's not necessarily a high ceiling guy, but people like his game for sure.
Yeah, so Lund, Pohlkamp, Cardwell, Havelid, Thompson. I do like Furlong. I think that's a good pick too. But those are my dudes for now.
Okay.
Alrighty. This is getting interesting because this is a pretty long list, and it seems like most of them are going to stay on this list until the draft, and then we'll have tons of new additions from the draft, and we have to fit them all in here.
Yeah, I mean, Thrun should get enough games to leave the list. Yes. Mukhamadullin might be good enough in this upcoming stretch if he gets called up that he might leave the list. Gushchin and Bordeleau possibly too. So we could have some graduates. But when I was talking to people about my list, one thing that they also mentioned is that the Sharks might be adding 2 blue chippers, the Penguins pick possibly, in this draft to this list. And the only blue chipper that might be leaving it is Mukhamadullin. So
yeah. Any other surprising things that you had just from the people you talked to about this list? Anybody?
Well, I'm gonna save that for an article.
Where can that article be found, I wonder?
Well, it hasn't been written yet, but I talked with the people I needed to talk to, and so it'll be out soon. So.
All right, we should go to bed.
Yes.
You all should go to bed, even if it's the middle of the day and you're listening to this. Go to bed. But we will be back next week with tons and tons of Sharks news and hopefully some call-ups. Let's get some fun names off this list to get called up. So that's my hope.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. Hope you have a good week. Bye.